Hello and welcome to the Hey Boomer Show. This is the show for those of us who believe that we are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. My name is Wendy Green and I am your host for Hey Boomer. And our guest today, Melissa Davies, is the embodiment of my favorite quote that you are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. At the age of 65, Melissa was an executive at a managed care facility or company, and she had no desire to retire. But she also had this nagging question in her mind about what did I always want to do that I'm not going to get to do if I don't try it soon? So, we never know how much time we have left. And that's a question that comes up a lot when I'm talking to people that are getting ready to retire or thinking about retirement. And they're like, what am I going to do? And the question is, what have you always wanted to do? But then there are those things that stop us. We call them fears. Am I too old? Other people are going to think I'm crazy. I wouldn't even know where to start. So we're going to talk to Melissa about some of this, but what she did was she started out with making a list of some of the things that she thought she would like to do that she had been putting off. And then something happened. The universe, I would say, intervened and gave her that little extra push that she needed to get started. So we're going to hear her story in just a moment. But did you know that there are multiple ways that you can connect with the Hey Boomer community? When you listen live, like some of you are doing now on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, you can always add comments. We love to see the hellos. We also love to see the questions that come in and your comments, what you're learning from the episode. So feel free to participate in the comments. You can also download the Life Vitality Assessment from the Hey Boomer homepage, and that will also subscribe you to our email list where you will find out about upcoming shows and sometimes what I'm thinking about during the week. You can join our Boomer Banter, or you can become a Boomer Believer. So the Boomer Banter is our online community, and we meet once a month for companionship and discussion and laughing and learning, and we're building a community there. It's really a wonderful place. And you can support the creative work that we're doing also as a Boomer Believer. So that's a monthly contribution. Or you can join our Facebook group. I'm going to share the links for how to do all of that in the show notes and in the takeaway clip that I will leave you with from the show. But before I do that, I want to bring Melissa on and tell you a little bit about her. Hello, Melissa.
Hello, Wendy.
I'm so glad you're here. So let me tell your story because it's so inspiring and I think people are going to get a lot from this. So Melissa is a documentary filmmaker who lives in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. She's a wife, a mother, a grandmother to 3 young boys, and she's a world traveler and with a strong sense of curiosity. Melissa retired after more than 2 decades from Gen X Services, where she built and operated the company's Social Security Representation Division. Gen X is the largest managed care case management organization in the US. Prior to that, Melissa had almost 20 years of diversified experience in the field of disability. She had held senior leadership and management positions throughout her career. Melissa's second act is fueled by a lifelong passion for film and storytelling. So we want to hear about that, Melissa. I teased a little bit about how you came to this reinvention idea of being a filmmaker, but would you fill in the gaps for us, please?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me. It's always fun to, get to chat with other women. I, You mentioned I was 65 and I was in my corporate career when I had been in it, for more than 2 decades at that point. And it was, it was great. It was wonderful. It was one of the best jobs I've had. And I've had 3 or 4 different iterations of myself in the working world. But, it was something about turning 65. And it certainly wasn't the company because they weren't ageist in any way. They had a lot of people who were my age. It was a very large national company. Um, and I was sitting at my desk and I was like, gosh, I wonder, I really don't want to die at my desk. That used to be kind of a joke with my colleagues. Like, and they would be like, what are you talking about? And they were just happy to keep moving along.
Right.
There was a little piece of dissatisfaction, and that surrounded, me taking a look, an inventory at my life and saying, have I really done all the things I want to do? And I had done a lot. So I'd had different careers. I'd had, you know, children, grandchildren, a marriage. I mean, all the things that would fulfill you. I traveled a lot internationally as well as in the country. And so it was a fulfilling life. But when I really sat down and said, well, what are all these things that, if I made a checklist, haven't I done that I really, really want to do? And it was more than just saying, oh, take a trip to Istanbul or whatever, what
Right.
I know to do at some point, whether I was working or not. So I made the list, and, crazy things were on the list, like learn how to play a saxophone. And I don't read music. So that one fell off the list pretty quickly. But film was I've always been interested in film and storytelling. So it's like, write a book, make a movie. And they kept staying at the top, tell
Mm.
stories. And so I just started thinking about it. And then one day, in the midst of all, two things happened in the midst of all this, and they happened simultaneously. And one was the CEO that I reported to came to me and said, oh, we're being bought again by private equity. And so that because that had happened a few
Yeah.
times in my time at Gen
Yeah.
X. And he said, you know what that means? It means you're going to have to sign up again for another commitment for 5 years. So, which normally I would just say, oh, yeah, okay, that's great. But that's when I was 65. And I saw that number 70. And I thought, oh, yeah. Will I still be at the desk at 70? And then what will be after that? Will I
Right.
wait
And
too long?
everything changes with, yeah.
It
Yeah.
does. So that was the seed. And that was, while I'm doing the list, I'm listening to this is happening. I went to a meeting in DC. The meeting was, a congressional meeting about Social Security. And I've been going there for years, and it was like Groundhog Day because the meeting never seemed to accomplish too much. And I remember
Yeah.
sitting there with a friend of mine saying, oh, I'm going to leave early today. I've had enough of this. We are not moving forward in my lifetime on these issues that have been at the forefront for 20 years. So I left and I came home and I didn't go to work. It was still early in the day. And I hooked up with a friend who I hadn't seen in a year because I was so busy. And I took a ride with her to
Yeah.
pick up her daughter from school. And it's in the country out here near Valley Forge. And we were going up a dirt road to drop her daughter off at the horse barn where she worked after school. And she said, I come up here every day, and I think they're making a movie over there. Take a look. So we drove up, and dirt road, funny day. And I could see the cameras and I could see the lights. And I was like, yeah, definitely. Looks like a movie. So we dropped off Grace, her daughter, came back around, and we sat down in front on the road in front of all this activity. And I said, I bet I know who it is because it's
Really?
creepy looking. Oh, yeah. It was a creepy vibe. The day was creepy. The trees were creepy. The lighting was wild. And it's Pennsylvania, and it's Chester County, Pennsylvania. And I thought, well, you know who makes movies here all the time? M. Night Shyamalan. So I
Oh
whipped out my
gosh.
iPhone and just put his name in. And sure enough, up comes a picture of him saying M. Night Shyamalan's making a micro-budget film in Chester County, Pennsylvania. And when I looked at his website, the picture on his website was where we were sitting. And I had just taken a picture of this incredibly beautiful but creepy view of this long driveway with all these craggly trees and the dark sky and the sun hitting. And he had it on his website. So I said, well, it's
Wow.
definitely him. And there was a little button that said Charity Buzz. And I didn't know what it was, so I hit it. And when I hit Charity Buzz, I learned that he had an educational foundation. And it said, win a day on the set with M. Night Shyamalan. And all the proceeds that you would, bet would go to his foundation. So my girlfriend is like, you've got to do it. This is like kismet. You need to do this.
Right.
So I did, right? While we were sitting there, I hit the Charity Buzz red button and I started bidding. It seemed that it was just me and a dentist from New Jersey who kept,
oh my gosh.
Other people were falling off and we just kept bidding. So short story is I was at work about a week later and I had my phone up because I knew that I had kept bidding that night before and that they were going to announce that day. And they announced that it was me that won the day on the set with Mr. Shyamalan. So in the next 2 weeks,
Wow.
After signing all the NDAs, there I was with him behind the camera and the entire crew for 8 hours in Philadelphia, doing a scene for his film, The Visit. And
wow.
At that point, you can only imagine.
But that's a message. That's a message that's like, you're on the right track. This is here's how you do it.
Yeah. And I thoroughly enjoyed the experience so much. He was kind of laughing about the fact that I was so excited about it. And he really was very accommodating. He had me behind the camera, telling me what he was doing, asking me what I thought. I was with the crew. It was an amazing day. And we sat together at lunch. And, he said, I've never done Charity Buzz before, and I'm so glad it was you and not some person that showed up with a script in their hand for me to read. And we were laughing about that. And he said, and he asked me what I did for work. And I tried to explain it to him quickly, which isn't easy for somebody who's probably never heard of insurance and managed care and Social Security. And he looked at me really quizzically and he said, oh, what do you really want to do? And I said, I want your job. I said, I want your job. And he said, oh, you better hurry up. And he was kidding. And it hit me, right in the middle of the stomach. And I remember it was just such an odd feeling because I knew that when he said that, he was kidding, but it was exactly what I needed to hear because he was right. I was 65 years old. And if I'm going to do this, I think I better seriously think about doing it now. So it was really at that moment, and it sounds cavalier, and I don't mean it to, that I said, I'm going to make a movie. I don't know what it is yet, but I think I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this. And by the time I got home that night, my husband couldn't wait to hear what I had. He knew how excited I was. And he's like, so what happened? How was it? And I said, John, I am going to quit my job and I am going to make a movie. And he just kind of looked at me and said, oh, okay. And just, he knows I get excited about things. And the next day I did go to the CEO and say, I'm going to put in my notice. It'll be a very long one because I wanted to make sure that I left the organization and the, division that I was responsible for in good hands. So I would need to mentor somebody. So I gave a year's notice. And I figured that would be a safe time for me to also begin this film process. So that's how it got kickstarted.
That is such an amazing story of things happening when they needed to happen and giving you the push you needed. So was there ever, you said you didn't know what you were going to make a movie about, right? You didn't have any idea at that point.
At that night when I went to bed, I did think about it. I was like, wait a minute, I just said out loud to couple of people. I'm going to make a movie. So I do need to figure out what that means. And I knew that I wasn't at a point to write a script. That's not what I was, ready to do. And I knew what I was comfortable with, and that was storytelling and hearing stories from people. That was part of my life, part of my work. And so that was going to be comfortable. And then it just hit me. I'm 65. Why not talk to other women who are over the age of 60, who have great stories to tell, to show people that they're still relevant, that they, are resilient people. They've had all kinds of life experiences, and their stories will resonate with people and hopefully make people think about their own stories and their own lives, and maybe even prompt some people to try something new. So that's when I decided I'm going to do interviews with women over the age of 60, and let's just see what happens. And that's how Beyond 60 was created.
Well, Melissa, so you gave a year's notice. Did you have any trepidation during that time, that year, of what am I thinking? I'm going to leave this secure job and I'm going to go off into the wilderness and make this movie, and I don't know how to make a movie?
I wasn't worried about learning something new because, at 65 and you've had a lot of jobs and you've been real responsible for building divisions and companies and whatnot, I was pretty confident that even though I didn't know something, that I could learn it and I could surround myself with the people that I needed to make that happen. So that part wasn't scary. The walking away from the security of the money and the identity related to that earning power was a little bit nerve-wracking. But giving myself that year of still being paid while I was putting this idea into play gave me a certain sense of security. So I didn't just quit my job and walk out the next day and sit at home and say, okay, now what do I do? So I felt kind of almost like I was embraced to do this. Like, okay, and the CEO and all the people I worked with knew I was doing this, and they did embrace me, and they did know that I was on the side. I was, creating this movie process that I would walk into the day that I finally left the company. And it was that way. I had it set up that by the time I walked out the door, I had already done the first 3 interviews of the 9 women. And I was playing with, what am I going to do with this? Is it going to be a full-fledged film? Is it going to be a short? Somebody even said maybe it'd be a podcast with different women that you would interview. But my hope was that it would be a film, and that's what I turned it into.
Watching the movie, I had so many thoughts going through my head, about, like, how did you decide, I'm going to do a little clip here and a little clip there and a little clip here, and and the visuals that you used, like the swimming and the actress. I mean, how did you decide to tie all of that together? I mean, that had to take a lot of layout and thought and talking to people.
Yes. And I went out, the first thing I did when I decided I was going to make this film was I went out and I found a production company in Philadelphia who was very interested in working with me on this. So they were they were all in late 20s to late 30s, and they were my mentors. I was 65. They're showing me the ropes of what needs to be done to get a film done. So I use their camera people, and I use their lighting and their sound. And then we put this together over a more than 2.5-year period. That's how long it took to complete, almost 3 years before it was out for viewing. And, I learned a lot in the process. And when I would do each of the long interviews, like 9 women, they probably had 6 to 8 hours of interview for each one. Actually, it was more than that because I think I ended up with 80 hours of tape. And it was trying to figure out, how do I get this to like an hour, hour and a half, and really tell the stories of each of these women, because I think that they each had a very important message to send. It was trial and error. And one thing that, when I looked at them when they were full interviews all together, it was too much like talking heads. I thought I would lose people in the process. So we did start to play with, let's just give a taste of Peggy in the beginning and leave it at a cliffhanger. She was the one who was kidnapped. And then, let's give a taste of the original voice of Siri and a taste of each one, and then come back a couple of times during the filming to round out their stories and end with a message of sorts. Each one of them had some type of a message to send.
Oh,
So
they
it was
totally
trial
did.
and error and learning as you go. So I see this as my senior project. That's what I call it.
Yeah, and I'm curious. When I started Hey Boomer, I started it as Facebook Live, but it took me about a year before I was comfortable with saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a podcast host."
Right.
And I'm wondering if it took you some time to embrace that. Oh yeah, I'm a filmmaker. I'm a director. I'm a producer.
Yeah, it is a little funny to not have a film out yet and say I'm a filmmaker. And so I did shy away from that. And there were a couple of people that said, well, you're not a filmmaker yet. You didn't make a film. I mean, people can be
I
very
know.
direct. So I
Yes,
was
they
always
can.
careful with that. You know what I mean? And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm in the midst of making this very complicated film. And I had a lot of filmmakers and producers say to me, you are a filmmaker. You are one. You are making a film, whether it does well or not. You're a filmmaker. This is what you're
Yeah.
doing. So say it out loud and shout it from the rooftops and be
Right?
proud as to what you're doing. So I did
Yeah.
get more comfortable with it. Yeah.
It is it's like when we graduate from college and we have our degree, okay, well, I'm a computer scientist, or I'm an
Right.
accountant or whatever, right?
Yes.
Now we're making something up that we've
You're
never
making it
done
up.
before.
Exactly. Exactly. So, it takes a while for that shift and to collide with your confidence. And people shy away from their confidence a lot of times because they're afraid that they're going to sound like they're boasting, or, I don't know. And sometimes you do draw the wrong attention. And some of the attention that you may receive could be seen as negative. But, you have to let that go, and you have to feel really good about whatever it is that you're doing.
You
Whether you're
do.
playing a trombone or you're writing a book or you're making a film or you're doing a podcast, you are doing that. You're
You
in the
are doing
midst of
that.
it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you need to be confident about it. You do.
Yeah.
You need to be
Yeah.
confident about it
And
and feel good.
I have a quote here. There were a couple of women in the movie that said age has given them permission to follow a dream or to say no to things that they don't want to do.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, like for you, did age give you this permission to, other people might have said, well, you're not a filmmaker, but did age give you permission to finally say, yeah, yeah, that's what I am?
Yes. Yes. There is this certain, I always had confidence in myself in what I was doing at the moment. So whether
Mm-hmm.
I was, in the nonprofit world or the for-profit world, my work, when I felt good about it and I had learned what I needed to learn, and I was always learning, I had a certain confidence about that. So to me, as you get older and you have all these experiences in life, not just work experiences, life experiences, marriages, divorces, children, grandchildren, travel, speaking with people, hearing stories, telling stories to people. There is this certain level of confidence where you feel good enough about yourself to say, hey, this is me. And I am now ready to do the next thing. And if people think that I'm not, well, let them think that, because where that would have bothered me when I was younger, So a
Right.
couple of the comments that I received when I started doing this, it really would have bothered me. But I just thought, okay, they're looking at this with a completely different lens than mine. And all of my chances and choices and decisions that I'm making are mine. And if I fail, I'll learn from the failure and move forward and do it a different way, because that's the way you live life. So there is this confidence that comes with being older. And if there are people out there that think, well, I'm 65 or I'm 70 or whatever, and I don't feel that confidence, maybe you need to look a little deeper, because it's probably there. And there are probably things that you have done in your life that somebody else would say, wow, I never could do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And,
Exactly.
so it's just an age thing where and you're right, there was a theme with all of the women in the film saying, I can just say no if I don't want to do it now. I can do
Right.
whatever I want. And they all feel very comfortable and confident about that.
Yeah, I think that was part of the resilience that came through with a lot of their stories. It was like, we've all had challenges, things to overcome.
Mhm.
And I love that you said we've all done things that maybe we didn't look at as so brave or courageous or whatever, but somebody else might have looked at it and said,
That's
"Oh my
right.
gosh, I can't believe you did that." Um,
Right.
and so giving ourselves credit. And I think the other thing, Melissa, and I'm sure you must have found this, is surrounding yourself with people that support you, that believe in you. You have those
Mhm.
naysayers, but did you have a tribe of people, or at least a few people that were like, Melissa, you got this. I know you can do this.
Yes. And I have a number of friends that, at times when I would feel anxious about, it's not coming together the way I want it to, they would just say, give it time. You've got this. You have the view. It's just putting the puzzle together. So not only the young people in the production company who were wonderful, the crews that I worked with, my dearest friends, my husband, who I think was extremely skeptical in the very beginning.
Like,
Because
"No, I'm
he's
going to
not
quit
as
my
much
job
of a
and be a
risk
movie
taker.
maker."
I mean, he doesn't take willy-nilly risks. He's much more stable than I am that way, which makes us probably a great couple. But he became a great cheerleader, and he was a great listener, and he knew that I was going to do this. He saw me pushing through, and my children, my adult children, were like, Mom, you can do anything you want. This is awesome. So you had
Good for
enough of that
them.
around you,
Yeah.
to make the naysayers, and there were only a couple of them. And it wasn't bad. It was just like, you're not a filmmaker. You can't say you're a filmmaker. You don't know how to make a film,
Well,
so,
now you do.
the
Now you do. And you're
negativity or
making
the
a second
judgment.
film, right?
Yes,
You're
yes. I'm
tell
almost done
tell
with
me
that
about
one.
this second film.
Well, the second film is called Climbing into Life, and it is the life story of one woman instead of nine. I thought I bit off the more than I could chew the first time. So this time I decided to stay a little more focused, and do one woman story. And her name is Deirdre Wallenick, and she is the mother of Alex Honnold. And Alex Honnold, if people are watching this and have seen the documentary Free Solo, that's her son that climbed El Capitan, with no ropes and no help, nothing whatsoever.
That was nerve wracking.
Daunting, the only one that's ever done it. So she's the mother, and she is a fascinating individual, an intellect, an artist, a musician, a professor, a linguist, a writer. I mean, she has done just about everything, but she was never an athlete. And she decided as she got a little bit older, now, wait a minute, what am I? And she has a daughter who's also a super athlete. And she started looking at her kids and saying, what am I missing here? Maybe I should get into their world and understand them better. And the short story is she asked her son, Alex, to teach her how to climb, rock climb. So this started in her late 50s, early 60s, climbing in a gym. And then eventually she became the oldest woman to climb El Capitan in Yosemite with ropes, of course, but her
Yeah.
son led her up. And
Wow.
then on her 70th birthday, she did it with friends. And so I went out there a year ago to film her in Yosemite and at her home. And her story is just remarkable and fascinating. And it's with editors right now. We're going through the editor process. And
Did you have to
hopefully in the
climb?
late fall, I think,
Did you have to
is
climb
when we
with her
will.
to do the filming?
No, we didn't do the El Capitan climb. She's already done those. So
Uh-huh.
what we did was we went with a climbing videographer. I only had to climb up the 1,000 feet to get to the point where she started climbing. And
I
that was
only had to climb.
daunting. You have no idea. We had a guide, my husband and I, he was doing some still photography. And I had to sit down like every 10 minutes on the way up. It was daunting. So that was their climb in just to get to start climbing El Cap. And it was amazing. So I had a climbing videographer going with her to capture pictures of her climbing. It was
Wow.
amazing. It was an amazing experience. And being in Yosemite is just unbelievable. And we had beautiful weather and it was
Good.
gorgeous. Yeah.
Good.
So that's the next one. So stay tuned. I hope late fall people will see
Climbing
that
into
at home.
life. Climbing
Climbing
into
into
life.
life.
Okay. So I'm curious as to how you get these out. Like these don't come into the big theaters, right? So how do you get the word
Right.
out and start to make some of the money back that it costs to make the
Oh,
movie?
well, that's a whole different story. That's the part that's not fun, that reminds me of corporate work. There's a whole
Mm,
legal aspect to everything and insurance and all of that. Well, when Beyond 60 was finished, and I did the film festival circuit in 2018, 19, and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, everything stopped. I really couldn't get it out there. So I started, talking with distributors about how it would get out onto the different streaming platforms or who would buy it or what would work. And their whole, world shrunk down during COVID as well. So finally, by 2021, a distributor got in touch with me and said, I want to help you with this. Let's get it out. They got it on to Gravitas, who's a big distributor, and they put it out onto all the platforms. And as far as
okay.
getting your money back as an independent filmmaker in today's world, that's like way down the road. So do I
Yeah.
have small checks coming in now? Yes, very small. And it is being seen by tens of thousands of people. So that's making me happy. But you share obviously the profits with agents and distributors and the actual streaming platform itself. And then you're the last person that gets the next little check.
You
But
did all
that
the
goes on
work.
for the next 15 years. So, hopefully I'll still be kicking at that point. So
Yeah. Well,
climbing into the same thing. I will, start talking with distributors before it's finished and see what kind of interest there is for a story like this.
so you've had to do everything. You had to figure out how to put together the story, find the crews, be the director, now be the producer, the business end of things too. But did you have any idea what you were taking on when you started this?
Sort of, because remember, I have built a division within a huge corporation and worked with other even larger corporations at a very granular level. And I know how hard it is to do that. And I know what it means to build teams of people that know more than you do about certain things. So I kind of had an idea. I knew what I didn't know, but I knew how to find the people that would help me figure that out. So that part wasn't really too bad. I think
Yeah.
the biggest eye opener is in the distribution of it. It's very difficult. If it had been 2 years earlier, I would have had the opportunity to go to an Amazon or a Netflix and say, do you want to buy this film? And that was back when they were saying, sure, here's $250,000, we'll take it. Well, they haven't done
Right.
that for a couple of years. They don't do that anymore. So it is a daunting task to get it out there. So I feel very fortunate that it is available for everybody to see, and that it is being seen by lots of eyes. So, and I continue, over the years and months to get wonderful feedback from people all over. People are seeing it on airplanes now, so that's
really?
always
Well,
fun.
that's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
it was easy to find. I went on YouTube, but you told me it's on Amazon Prime and Apple Plus and
yeah,
Voodoo. I mean, all these different places, and you can
yes,
rent it or buy it. So like I think it was $3.99 or something to rent it. So
yeah.
everybody go and watch this Beyond 60 movie, and at least a little bit more money might trickle in, because it was very
Yeah.
inspiring though, watching these women. I wonder, when you did your interviews with them, and what was, I mean, I love that you actually, here I'm going to change this question a little bit, you brought in the young women at the end to talk to
Mhm.
them about
Mhm.
how they saw themselves when they got older. Where did you get that idea?
We were hemming it. We actually did them bookends at the beginning and the very end. And with the production company, I was like, okay, I just wanted, there was something missing and I didn't know what it was. And I just thought it would be nice to have something other than just the women's stories. And my first idea was to take the crew, because the crew was very young, and men and women on the crew, and sit down and interview them about how these stories impacted them, or did they, and how did they feel about aging, and did their views of older women change by doing this. The problem with that is crews change. And we're talking an almost 3-year period, and to try to coordinate getting everybody sitting down in one place at one time, it was almost impossible. So one of the production guys that I was working with, Jim, he said, well, why don't we just grab some young women, same idea, and see what they think. So then we started getting in touch with people in Philadelphia, and all of the young women that you see are artists and, just creatives from the Philadelphia area. And
Okay.
we got in touch with someone who set us up with these women, and we interviewed them to see how they felt about aging. And I thought it was a nice juxtaposition for
Yeah.
the older women's stories.
Yeah, it was interesting. So the other question that I was going to ask you is about resiliency, and how you see yourself and those women, and how resiliency has played a part in your lives.
It's such a, some people will say it's an overused word, but I have to tell you, for myself and for all these women that I interviewed, it was in the forefront all the time. And that resilience is gained through having not a cushy life and a simple life, but having a life that has allowed you to experience so many different things and make so many different mistakes, that you have this new muscle that you build. That's that resilience muscle that allows you to just keep popping back all the time and getting better at your next step. And I've found that with myself. I have, you know, if we had, 12 hours to talk about all the mistakes I've made and all the changes I've been through in my lifetime, and the 9 women, the same thing. And you, I'm sure, there, we go through these difficult times in life. And as we get older, we look back and we realize, wow, we really racked up a lot of experiences. And those experiences and failures and, missteps or whatever they might be, caused our resilience muscle to just grow, which gives us this power as we get older, and this interest and kind of intrigue about, what else can we do? And,
Yeah,
the resilience factor will be there to get us through it, even if we fail, even if I make a
absolutely.
mistake. And I
Yeah.
remember when I was younger, when I would make a mistake at work, I was crushed. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, it was just a silly mistake. And I learned from it and I moved forward, but why was I crushed? Why isn't failure okay? Failure's a part of growing and, adding more to your bucket. So
Yep. Yeah. And I think you're right. That resilient muscle builds up because I think when we were young, we all wanted to be, recognized as smart or capable or whatever. And we were afraid to make a mistake. And now it's like,
exactly.
okay, so I screwed up. So let's move on.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know, I, I always end up on my feet, just like a cat. Right. So,
exactly. And that's
yeah.
the beauty of getting older. If
Yeah.
you're lucky enough to have your health, and
Right.
your mental acuity and all of that is intact, it doesn't matter how old you are, because the older you get, the more experiences you've had and the more opportunities then there are to learn some new things. And
Yeah.
that makes me really happy when I talk to other women and men that talk about figuring that out in their lifetime and try now to cram in as many new things as possible.
Yeah. So, Melissa, if somebody was to come up to you today and say, help, I'm trying to figure out what my second act should be, could be, I'm afraid, what kind of advice do you think you would give them?
Well, first I would ask them to make a list of all the things that they're interested in, and then or have been interested in their lifetime, and then why didn't they try any of those? What is the reasoning behind why the list is there and it hasn't been acted upon, and what is holding you back? And usually it's fear. The fear of the unknown, and the fear of failure. And I think that's where, there's so many people you can talk to about that. There
Yeah.
are podcasts that talk about that. There are, social
Coaches that
workers,
talk.
therapists that talk to you about fear, because getting through that fear is amazing. It's just amazing when you
Yeah.
get through to the other side and you realize, okay, that was really uncomfortable for about 20 minutes. And then, okay, but I get it now. I can see the picture and I'm going to move in that way. Um, but people seem to put themselves in boxes as well. If you grew up and you were a scientist, or you were a teacher, or you were a nurse, or whatever it was that identified you as an individual, that's not all there is. There's
No.
this whole complex person besides that job. So find out what it is that you're interested in, and then start asking people for their assistance and guidance and just discussion about, well, where would you go if you wanted to do this? And the more people you ask, the more suggestions they will have.
The caveat to that, I think make sure you ask the people that are supportive, right? Not
Yes.
people that are going to say, well,
Yes.
you're not a filmmaker, but ask people that are going to be supportive and facing that fear. I mean, yes, it's hard and uncomfortable, and it is so worth it when you come out the other side. It really
Yeah,
is.
it really
So,
is. It really is. And again, a lot of people look at me and they go, oh, she probably knew about filmmaking. She probably went to school for it. No, I really didn't know quite what I was doing. And were there moments that I felt sick to my stomach? Yes, because I thought, oh, am I doing this right? Is it going to be right? But then it was like, stop asking and just do, until you
exactly.
figure it out. And you do come out the other side, and
Right.
you do, as long as you have that support of people who care about you and want to see you succeed. That pumps you up to no end, and you can
Absolutely.
really
That
do
counts
whatever
for a
you
lot.
want. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me tell people where to find you. So you can go to Melissa's website, beyond60.com. I'm sure there'll be another website for climbing into
Mhm.
life. But for right now, you can find beyond60.com, where you can see where the movie can be seen. You can email Melissa at melissajdavey, Davey, at verizon.net. She is on Facebook. You can find the Facebook page Beyond 60 Documentary. And she is on Instagram, which is the at Beyond 60 Project. So lots of
Mhm.
ways to connect with her and follow what she's doing and be inspired by her and add your inspiration to her. All of us who are in these putting ourselves out there fields and, trying to be creative and helpful. Certainly do appreciate the feedback and the inspiration we get from people that are following us. So
Yes, we do.
thank you for that, Melissa.
Thank you.
And if you like some of what you are hearing, Gail says, thank you, Melissa. If you like some of what you're hearing on Hey Boomer, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at wendy@heyboomer.biz, or you can leave a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify Podcast. One of the recent reviews I got said, quote, "A great listen. Wendy's podcast is full of information to help navigate midlife and beyond. She's shining a light on boomers and the issues that arise." So that felt good. That was nice to hear. And next week, we're going to focus on brain health. My guest will be Dr. Crystal Culler. She's the founder of the Virtual Brain Health Center. She's a doctor of behavioral health and a holistic brain health expert. She brings nearly 2 decades of expertise in working with individuals, families, providers, and advocacy organizations, specializing in brain-related diagnoses. And she was referred to me by several friends of Hey Boomer. So I'm very curious to find out what Dr. Culler has to say about keeping our brains healthy for as long as possible. And you know that I always like to leave you with the belief that we can all live with relevance, live with courage, and live with curiosity. And as Melissa and I both believe, you are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you.
I will talk to you soon, hopefully. Bye.